man, that gave me so much fucking...
You alright?
I'm so...
Thank you. When you take slams like that, every fiber in you screams so that you can't commit a second try, no matter how badly you want it. You go in a form of hesitation. So as Carlos is running up those stairs, each time, he's trying to assess, hold that down, he's trying to assess, what do I do? It's kind of physical debugging process of how do I correct that? So he's trying to align what went wrong with actual physical details. What about the ollie? How do I hold my shoulders? Sometimes it's as subtle as where you fix your eyes. Well, in this process, because it's such a touchy-feely thing, a lot of times you're just simply wrong. So in each session, what happens is you go down rabbit trails. And the ability to be able to backtrack, find the fork where you went wrong, find the fork where you went wrong, and then correct it while you're enduring this kind of beating, it takes a lot, particularly when you're punch drunk from the fatigue of it. And so this is just one of the qualities I'd like to delve into that makes a skater great. These are all combo moves, where all you do is you add two pieces together. Now for each one, both you and your board take on certain momentums, which means there's a kind of rule or, I don't know, algebra or syntax to the way you piece them together. Sometimes that means you have to jump against the momentum of your board in one way to connect it with an overall arching momentum that will pull you through. Well, that equates to throwing yourself out of balance in order to recover it, which doesn't at all come naturally. And so this is just another way that we have to kind of fight certain tendencies that almost obey different rules. As you dial these tricks in, it's akin to making a flip book where you spend endless hours writing through every page, and then eventually you can, with the flick of a thumb or a foot, out comes fluid motion. Now every skater builds a kind of vocabulary or library of these things, which he tags with what are called somatic markers. So that with a flick of the cognitive mind, all of this stuff, fairly complex movement, it just triggers in an unthinking way. These are called executive motor functions, and the better you get at taking each one and prying them open and touching each tag, the better you're able to coordinate and combine these different tricks. From a skater's perspective, you can almost always tell when somebody is skating on a non-native terrain because they bring with them a kind of physical dialect that gets embedded in from the physics of the environment where those first executive motor functions were formed. Now, vert skaters are a good example because they're floating around in a relatively weightless environment, so that when they come down to the flat, they have this kind of, I don't know, it's a light touch with a mellow timing, super relaxed. Well, Tony Hawk calls it vertosis. Now when street skaters go up there, they have kind of this earthbound punchiness that doesn't translate at all very well into just floating in the way that they do. Shaun White is a great example of someone who's almost perfectly bilingual. In this sense, I think, aside from being an Olympian, part of his distinctiveness comes from a certain mindset that gets baked in from all that work too. None of us have access to the way sort of he thinks, and it brings something different. And I'm particularly sensitive to this because that's probably the best thing I ever had going for me. I'm not at all native to street skating, which in a sense is horrible because I brought a rotten accent that I still can't shed after 20 years physically. But what it did is almost kind of inculcate a mindset where I took from a common pool of tricks and made myself distinctive from my sort of equally, if not more talented peers. These are some of the most creative and driven people I have ever known, and having spent so much time around them, I've become hardened in this conviction that the greatest obstacle to creativity is breaking through a kind of barrier of disbelief. That's seen in a number of ways. Video is probably the easiest to illustrate it. As you can see, we spend a lot of time documenting what we do, and by the time we publish, say something that took a couple of years for us to put together, within months, weeks, days, a so-called friend will send you a link of some kid across the planet where you didn't even know had skateboards, and he's doing your trick with a kind of ease. It doesn't mean he's as good as you, but it does mean he had all that it took. At least, of course, until he saw the video. Took that to precipitate it, which means it's not so much that he learned how to do it from the video, and trust me, I understand the difference. It's that he learned that it could be done. Lots of people have good ideas and all kinds of attributes to make it happen. I see that a lot. But it takes this sort of synergistic integration of the human elements, in particular belief, to precipitate them. It's a strong force. That's the craziest footage. Imagine you're that guy, right? You're standing up on the banister, your heart's pounding, cameraman, you know what's about to go down. Everybody gets afraid, including him. In fact, especially him, because he does this stuff a lot, which is what allows him to do it. Through paradigm, he's able to condition himself to kind of wall off that fear enough to get the job done. Because again, everybody has it. Now, if you're around these guys a lot, one thing you pick up pretty quickly is whatever you do, don't think about it too much. Because it'll let in fear that will metastasize into panic and shut you down. And so at the same time, you know he's going through all this debugging stuff, the correlation of speed and all that stuff is happening, a lot of cognitive stuff going on. So how does that work? Well, one of the guys he's a good friend of mine, and he is rightfully called a legend, particularly this stuff. If you take him there, and he catches himself staring at it too much, he doesn't care who's waiting for him, how many cameramen, he just goes home. He comes back another day. And it's a kind of wisdom through the years you get, where you know how to deal with the cognitive stuff on its terms, but then deal with the conditioned stuff, let it do its thing, and kind of tread lightly in between them and go. That's how it works. The night before I got my first board, I was told that I would be like the short kid across the street who played basketball day and night, and I wasn't built for it. I wouldn't go anywhere. They may have good reasons for that. But the metrics of our success are determined by far more than what it takes to put a ball into a hoop and all that that may entail. I mean, respect to them. What we do as skateboarders, we take from a common pool of tricks and we individuate ourselves by what we do, how we add to that, how we distinguish ourselves, and then we give it back to the rest of the community so they can churn it and do the same for themselves. In this sense, we're very much of an open source community for which our standing rises according to our contribution and the authenticity with which we give it. You know, I held the title over 10 years, like Roger said, 35 times, 34 times I defended it. All that really does is give me, I guess, the standing to say there is no greater skateboarder, there can't be. There's always somebody out there with something that you don't have, because the layered attributes that determine how far we go, what we do with it, align in a myriad of ways. It's almost an art form in the way we do it that's usually resonant with our individual characters. That's why you can always tell a person by how he skates in a way. So where I'm going is that I think that our communities have a lot in common, and hopefully you can draw from something that I've shown you here. Either way, thank you for listening.